Here is something that sounds like a party trick, but is real science. If you count how many times a cricket chirps in 14 seconds and add 40, you get the temperature in Fahrenheit, accurate to within a degree or two. It is called Dalbert's law, named after a physicist who published it in 1897, and it works because a cricket's whole body runs on heat. The warmer the air, the faster its muscles fire, the faster it sings. Crickets are not chirping just to fill the night with noise. That song is a mating call, and the male singing fastest and loudest is usually the one most likely to get a female's attention. So here is the real question, hiding behind that party trick. If heat changes how fast a cricket sings for a mate, does it also change how likely that cricket, or any other animal, actually ends up mating at all? Crickets are hardly the only animals whose love life runs on a thermostat. Fireflies flash faster on warm summer nights than on cool ones, which is part of why firefly season always seems to peak during the hottest stretch of summer. Frogs tell the same story. On a warm, humid night after rain, a pond can turn into a wall of overlapping frog calls, each male racing to out-sing his neighbors, and on a cold night that same pond can go almost silent. Have you ever wondered why any of this actually matters, beyond being a fun fact for a nature documentary? It comes down to something biologists call sexual selection, which is really just a fancy way of describing how animals choose who to mate with, and how that choice shapes the next generation. Strong mate choice is not just about romance. It can decide whether a population thrives or slowly fades out, because choosing the healthiest, best adapted partner tends to pass on genes that help offspring survive. Think about a peacock dragging around a tail that makes it slower and easier for predators to catch, or a bowerbird spending days decorating a stage out of blue bottle caps and flower petals just to impress a picky female. Evolution keeps building these elaborate, expensive mating displays because, over millions of years, the payoff of attracting a mate outweighs the cost of carrying it around. So what happens to that whole delicate system when the temperature underneath it starts shifting? That is not a hypothetical question anymore. It is the actual world animals live in right now. You may already know that heat can mess with reproduction in strange ways. In sea turtles, the temperature of the sand around a nest decides whether the eggs hatch mostly male or mostly female, with warmer sand producing more females, a pattern that has conservationists worried as beaches heat up. But that is about which sex an animal becomes before it is even born. A completely different question is what happens after animals are already adults, already males and females, and heat starts changing how they search for a partner, how picky they are, and whether mating actually happens. For a huge share of animals on Earth, insects, spiders, crustaceans, fish, amphibians, reptiles, body temperature is not internally controlled the way it is in humans. These are cold-blooded, or more precisely ectothermic animals, and their metabolism runs almost entirely on the temperature around them. Warm them up and their nervous system fires faster, their muscles work harder, their whole pace of life speeds up. Cool them down and everything slows, sometimes to a near standstill. Does heat make an animal pickier about who it mates with, or does it make it settle for whoever happens to be nearby? Both answers have real scientific support, and biologists have gone back and forth on this for years. One camp argues that heat raises the energetic cost of hunting for a mate and comparing options, so under warmer conditions, animals should become less picky and mate faster just to get it over with, which would actually weaken mate selection over time. The opposite camp argues that when conditions are good and food is plentiful in the heat, animals can actually afford to be choosier, holding out for a higher quality partner, which would make mate selection even stronger rather than weaker. This is not just an academic argument. With global temperatures climbing year after year, Figuring out which of these two stories is closer to the truth could help predict how thousands of species will fare as their environments keep heating up around them. The tricky part is that a single study on a single species can only tell you about that one species. A cricket might respond to heat in a completely different way than a fish, a beetle, or a bird. To find out if there is some universal rule connecting temperature to mating across the animal kingdom, somebody needed to gather up every relevant study ever published and look at all of them side by side. Periodical cicadas take timing to an extreme most animals could never manage. Certain species spend 13 or 17 years underground as nymphs, tracking soil temperature the entire time, and then emerge within days of each other by the billions, synchronized so precisely that scientists can predict emergence within a narrow window just by watching soil temperature climb past about 64 degrees Fahrenheit. The entire point of that synchronized emergence is mating. Show up alone at the wrong time, and there is nobody left to sing to. Coral reefs pull off something even stranger. Once a year, on just a handful of nights, entire reefs release eggs and sperm into the water within the same narrow window, timed by a combination of water temperature and the phase of the moon. Get the timing wrong, and millions of years of evolution wasted a single shot at reproduction for that entire year. Notice the pattern running through every one of these examples. Timing is not a minor detail in the animal mating world. It might be the whole game, and temperature is one of the biggest dials controlling that timing. So as the planet's average temperature keeps climbing, what is that dial actually doing to animal mating on a global scale? Is warming going to nudge more species toward more successful mating, the way a firefly flashes faster in July? Or is it going to throw off timing that took millions of years to fine-tune, the way a cicada that emerges a few weeks early might find itself completely alone? Individual field studies have found examples supporting almost every possible answer, which is exactly the kind of mess that calls for pulling every scrap of existing data together into one place and letting the combined evidence speak for itself, instead of relying on any single species to tell the whole story. So what did scientists actually find when they finally put every study side by side? Two researchers at the University of Aberdeen, Natalie Pilakouta and Anais Baillet, set out to answer exactly that. They combined 53 separate studies covering insects, spiders, crustaceans, fish, amphibians, reptiles, and a couple of bird species, following the same rigorous review process used across medical research, and pulled out 29 measurements of how long it took animals to start mating, 29 measurements of how picky they were, and 58 measurements of whether mating succeeded at all. Here is the finding that surprised almost everyone involved. When they combined all 53 studies, there was no consistent overall effect of temperature on how long courtship took, how picky animals were, or whether mating succeeded. Some species mated faster with more heat. Some mated slower. Some barely changed at all. When the researchers dug into why the results scattered so widely, they found the answer was differences between species themselves, not any single universal rule, explaining well over 90% of the variation in every trait they measured. One pattern did survive the noise, though, and it was surprisingly narrow. Mating success went up specifically when animals experienced higher temperatures during the mating attempt itself, not when they had simply grown up warm or spent time in the heat earlier in life. A moment of heat right at the critical point seemed to tip encounters toward success, likely because warmer bodies process cues and signals faster in real time, the same reason a cricket sings faster on a hot night. One study the researchers cited looked at ambush bugs, small predatory insects that lie in wait on flowers for prey and mates alike. At higher temperatures, these bugs actually had a harder time finding a mate at all, likely because the heat pushed up their activity and metabolic demands to the point where searching itself became more costly. It is a reminder that the effect of a single degree can look completely different depending on which species you are watching. There was also a clear trade-off hiding in a smaller slice of the data. In the 10 studies that measured both how long courtship took and whether it succeeded in the very same animals, the two numbers moved in opposite directions almost every time, a correlation of -0.77. When heat shortened the time it took to start mating, success went up. When it stretched courtship out, success dropped. Speed and success, in other words, are tied together within a species, even though the overall direction of that speed is impossible to predict from one species to the next. There is also an honest limitation worth mentioning. Insects dominate this entire field of research. Out of the 53 studies, only 2 involved birds and not a single one involved mammals. That means scientists still cannot say with real confidence whether warm-blooded animals respond to heat anything like a cricket or a beetle does, simply because almost nobody has studied it yet. So does a warming world mean more successful animal mating, or less? The honest answer from the largest analysis of this question to date is that there is no single answer. It depends on the species, the life stage, and the exact moment the heat arrives. What is clear is that temperature and courtship are tangled together in ways evolution spent millions of years fine-tuning, and untangling exactly how a hotter planet will rewrite those rules for thousands of species at once is a project science has really only just begun. The next time you hear a cricket chirping on a warm summer night, you will know it is not just making noise. It is running a courtship broadcast shaped by millions of years of evolution, one that a warming planet is now quietly rewriting in ways researchers are still racing to understand.